Hi class, this is section 8.3 special right triangles. So in your video you learned about two types of special right triangles. You learned about triangles that have 45, 45, 90, and that's talking about the angles are 45, 45, and 90. And you learned about triangles that have a 30, 60, 90 relationship between the angles. So in a 45, 45, 90, these are actually all isosceles triangles, because if these angles are the same, then the sides across from them have to be the same. So that's why whenever they were talking about the side measures, they labeled both of these x, because they both have to be the same. And then the cool thing about the hypotenuse is it's always going to be x square root 2. Now the 30, 60, 90, the smallest side is just going to be x, that's across from the 30-degree angle. The medium side's across from the 60-degree angle, that's going to be x square root of 3. And the larger side is across from the right angle, and that's going to be 2x. So say that I told you that x was equal to 4. In the 45, 45, 90, the sides would be 4, 4, and 4 root 2. In the 30, 60, 90, the sides would be 4, 4 root 3, and 8. So before we actually start doing examples of these problems, I first want to talk about how to rationalize the denominator of a fraction. So notice in all three of these fractions, there's a square root in the denominator. We never want to have square roots in the denominator, so the way that we're going to get rid of it is you're going to multiply by that square root on the bottom and on the top. So the square root of 6 times the square root of 6 is the same thing as the square root of 6 squared. And we know that squares cancel out that square root. So if I multiply a square root by itself, it's going to get rid of the square root, and you're just going to be left with 6. And then on the top, I have 24 square root 6. It's okay to have square roots on the top. The last thing you need to do is simplify your numbers. 24 and 6 can be simplified. We don't want to look at the number under the square root. You just want to simplify right here for your fraction. So 24 divided by 6 is 4, and the square root of 6 is left over, so it's 4 root 6. The only way you can simplify the square root is if this number was divisible by a perfect square. Then you can start simplifying it that way. But you can only multiply and divide square roots by other square roots, not by whole numbers. So on the next one, I need to multiply by the square root of 2 over the square root of 2. So on the top, I have 32 square root of 2. On the bottom, square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is just positive 2. 32 divided by 2 is 16, and then I have the square root of 2 left over. On the last one, again, we need to multiply by the square root of 2 over the square root of 2. On the denominator, I will just have positive 2. On the numerator, I will have 6, and then I need to multiply these two square roots together. That's going to give me the square root of 6. The only time your square root goes away is if you're multiplying the same square root by itself. When you're multiplying different square roots, you just multiply the number inside. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and then we have the square root of 6 left over. Okay, so now let's start talking about those special right triangles. On these first two examples, I just want you to find x using the Pythagorean theorem. So go ahead and pause the video now and find x on each of those triangles. So to find x on the first one, you would have 3 squared plus 3 squared is equal to x squared. That would be 9 plus 9, which is 18, is equal to x squared. Then when you take the square root of both sides, this 18 would split into the square root of 9 times the square root of 2, and then the square root of x squared would just be x. So that would simplify to 3 square root 2. All right, the next one, you would have 8 squared plus 8 squared is equal to x squared. So this would be 64 plus 64 is equal to x squared. That would be 128 is equal to x squared. We take the square root of both sides. 128 is going to be simplified into square root of 64 times the square root of 2, which is going to simplify to 8 root 2. So notice on this triangle, the 45, 45, 90, I know it's a 45, 45, 90 because it's an isosceles triangle, which means these have to be 45 degrees. I have 3, 3, and then 3 root 2. This one, I got 8, 8, and then 8 root 2. So that's always going to happen when you have a 45, 45, 90. So in a 45, 45, 90 triangle, both legs are congruent, which means it's isosceles, and the length of the hypotenuse is square root of 2 times the length of each leg. So if you want to find the hypotenuse, you're going to do the square root of 2 times the leg. If you want to find a leg and you're given the hypotenuse, you're going to divide by the square root of 2. All right, so let's move on to the next page. All right, so here are some examples of 45, 45, 90 triangles and finding some missing sides. Let's start with this first one. If the legs are both 5, then the hypotenuse is going to be 5 root 2. On this one, I'm given one leg, so I know the other leg is 5 root 3. Now to find the hypotenuse, I have to multiply by the square root of 2. So you're going to have 5 root 3 times the square root of 2. That's going to be 5 square root of 6. So that's the answer for x. On the last one, I'm given a leg, so I know the other leg is 5 root 2. Now to find the hypotenuse, 5 divided by root 2, sorry. To find the hypotenuse, you're going to multiply by the square root of 2. So we're going to have 5 over the square root of 2 times the square root of 2, and you can put it over 1 if you want to. So notice how these square root of 2's cancel out, and you're just left with 5. All right, I want you to try these at the bottom on your own, so you can pause the video now and try these on your own, and then I'll go over the answers. All right, on the first one, I am given the hypotenuse, so I need to find the legs. To go from the hypotenuse to the legs, you divide by the square root of 2. So we have 12 divided by the square root of 2. And then make sure that you rationalize this if it's going to be your final answer. So we're going to multiply by the square root of 2 over the square root of 2. So that will be 12 root 2 over 6, which is going to give me a final answer of 2 square root of 2. So that's my answer for x. Let's skip over here to the right. This time I'm given the hypotenuse. So I need to divide by the square root of 2 on this one. Whenever you're dividing fractions, you actually multiply by the reciprocal. So instead of dividing this by root 2, we're going to multiply by 1 over the square root of 2. I'm sorry. That wouldn't be the reciprocal. Oh, that was the reciprocal. So instead of dividing by the square root of 2, we're going to multiply by 1 over the square root of 2. So this would be 21 square root of 2 over 4 root 2. And notice the square root of 2's cancel out. So you're just going to be left with 21 over 4 for your legs. So that's going to be x and y. All right, this hypotenuse is 4 root 2. So if I was going to divide by the square root of 2, 4 root 2 divided by the square root of 2, those square root of 2's will cancel out. So you would just be left with 4 and 4. All right, let's move on to the next page. Now we're going to use these special right triangles to find the area of the triangle. So I know this is a 45, 45, 90, because if this is 45 degrees and we subtract 90 and 45 from 180, you'd be left with 45. So if the hypotenuse is 4 root 2, then the legs have to be 4. Now remember, to find the area, you're going to do base times height divided by 2. This has to be my base and my height because they're perpendicular. So area is equal to 4 times 4 divided by 2, which means area is going to be equal to 16 divided by 2, which is 8. All right, the next one, I have my hypotenuse is 6, so I need to find my leg so that I know what the base and the height are, because our hypotenuse doesn't help us find area. So that means I need to divide by the square root of 2. Remember to rationalize your denominator. We multiply by root 2 over root 2, which is going to give us 6 root 2 over 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3, so we have 3 root 2. So both of my legs are going to be 3 root 2. So my area is going to be 3 root 2 times 3 root 2 all over 2. 3 times 3 is 9. Root 2 times root 2 is 2. And then, sorry, I was writing this over to the side. And then you're dividing by 2. So these will cancel out, and you'll get that your area is equal to 9. All right, moving on to 30, 60, 90s. So the 45, 45, 90s are definitely the easier of the two. 30, 60, 90 triangles are a little bit more involved. So in a 30, 60, 90 triangle, will any of the sides be the same length? The answer is no, because if all the angles are different, then all the sides are going to be different. In a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the length of the hypotenuse is 2 times the length of the shorter leg, and the length of the longer leg is square root 3 times the length of the shorter leg. So the shorter leg's always going to be across from the 30, the longer leg is always going to be across from the 60, and the hypotenuse, as we know, is always across from the 90. So the hypotenuse is 2 times the short leg, the long leg is the short leg times the square root of 3. So if we labeled the short leg x, the hypotenuse would be 2x, and the longer leg would be x times the square root of 3. So let's try some problems. I can use those ratios to actually find missing sides in triangles. So notice you couldn't use the Pythagorean theorem on these triangles, because in order to use the Pythagorean theorem, you need to know 2 sides. In all of these triangles, I only know 1 side. So that's why we have to use these ratios to find the other sides. So when you're working with 30, 60, 90, you need to decide which side you have first. So this is the short leg, this is the long leg, and this is the hypotenuse. So I know the hypotenuse is 2 times the short leg. That means that x is going to equal 6. I know the longer leg is square root of 3 times the short leg, so that's going to be 3 square root of 3 for y. All right, the next triangle. This is my short leg, this is my long leg, and this is my hypotenuse. So I'm given my hypotenuse. If the hypotenuse is 7, then x is going to be divided by 2. We're going to have to divide by 2 to get the short leg, because you multiply by 2 to go this way, so you divide by 2 to get the short leg. So we're just going to write that as 7 over 2. We don't want to write the sides as decimals if we don't have to. Now to get to the longer leg, I have to multiply this by the square root of 3. So we're going to have 7 square root of 3 divided by 2. We can't simplify that, so that's just your final answer. The next one, x is going to be our short leg. I know this one has to be my long leg, because that would be the 60-degree angle. And y is going to be my hypotenuse. So now I have to start with my long leg. The relationship with another side would be with the short side, because you know you multiply by root 3 to get here. So that means to go this way, you would have to divide by the square root of 3. So we're going to do 5 divided by the square root of 3. We need to rationalize that, so we're going to do the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. So our final answer is going to be 5 root 3 divided by 3. I can't simplify the 5 and the 3, so that's just going to be my answer for x. 5 square root of 3 divided by 3. Now to go to the hypotenuse from the shorter leg, you just multiply by 2. So that's going to be 10 square root of 3 over 3. Alright, the next one, let's label our sides. This is going to be the short side, this one's the long side, and this one's the hypotenuse. So if I am given the long leg first, I'm going to divide by the square root of 3 to get to the short leg. So 15 divided by the square root of 3. We're going to simplify it by doing root 3 over root 3. So that'll be 15 root 3 over 3, which simplifies to 5 root 3. So x is equal to 5 square root of 3. Now to find the hypotenuse, you just double it. So you'll get 10 root 3 for y. So the most important side to find on these triangles is to always find the shortest side first. Because from the shortest side, you can find the hypotenuse and you can find the longer leg. So if you're given something else first, your first goal is to find the short side. So I want you to go ahead and try the next 4 on your own. So you can pause the video now and try these and then turn it back on to find the answers. Alright, so on the first one you were given the long leg. So we need to find the short leg and the hypotenuse. So to go from the long leg to the short leg, you have to divide by the square root of 3. So that's just going to be 3. Now to go from the short leg to the hypotenuse, you multiply by 2. So y is going to be 6. Alright, the next one. This time I was given the long leg again. The short leg's always across from the 30, and then here's my hypotenuse. So I'm going to need to divide by the square root of 3 to go from long to short. So 12 divided by the square root of 3. We need to rationalize that. So you'll get 12 root 3 over 3, which will give you 4 root 3. So x is equal to 4 root 3. Then we need to double that to get to the hypotenuse. So that's going to be 8 root 3. Alright, next problem. The short leg is x, the long leg is 5, and the hypotenuse is y. Yes, there is a reason why I keep making you work with the 60-degree side first, because these are the hardest problems that you could come across, because it's always the hardest when you start with your long leg. Because it's really easy if you start with your short leg, and if you start with your hypotenuse, you just have to divide by 2 to get that short leg. So these are the most difficult ones you'll come across, and that's why I want you to keep practicing them. Alright, so we have to divide by the square root of 3 to get to the short leg. So this is going to be, let me move my paper, 5 divided by the square root of 3. So we multiply by root 3 over root 3. So that will be 5 root 3 over 3. And 5 and 3 aren't divisible by any common factor, so we leave it like this. So 5 root 3 over 3 is going to be my x. Then we double that to get to our hypotenuse, so that's going to be 10 root 3 over 3. The final one, again, I start with my long leg, so I need to find my short leg and my hypotenuse. So I'm going to have 15 divided by the square root of 3 to get to that short leg. So I multiply by root 3 over root 3. That's going to give me 15 root 3 over 3, which equals 5 root 3. So x is equal to 5 root 3. So my hypotenuse is 10 root 3. All right, let's move on. Now we're going to do the same thing we did with the 45, 45, 90s. We're going to use the 30, 60, 90 to find some areas of triangles. So on this one, I'm missing my base. I was given my height. This is my short leg. So this one's going to be my long leg because this would be 60 degrees. So that would be 6 root 3 because you multiply by the square root of 3 if you're given the short leg. So my area is going to be 6 times 6 square root of 3 divided by 2. Area is equal to 36 root 3 divided by 2. 36 divided by 2 is 18, so it's going to equal 18 root 3. The next one, I'm given the hypotenuse. I definitely have to find my short leg and my long leg because that's going to be my base and my height. So to go from the hypotenuse to the short leg, you divide by 2. So that's going to be 3 root 3 divided by 2. We can't simplify that, so it's going to stay that way. Now to go to the long leg, I have to multiply by the square root of 3. So that's going to be 3, square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is 3 over 2, which is going to give me 9 over 2. That's why. Now I can find my area. 3 root 3 over 2 times 9 over 2, all divided by 2. So let's simplify the numerator first. That's going to be 27 root 3 divided by 4, and then we're dividing all of that by 2. So when you have a fraction on the top, instead of dividing by 2, you need to multiply by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 2 is 1/2. So we'll have 27 root 3 over 8. And then 27 and 8 don't have any common factors. 27 is not divisible by 4, it's not divisible by 2. So this is going to be your final answer for area. All right, let's try an application problem. A window washer leans a 40-foot ladder against the side of a building. So this is my ladder, it's going to be 40 feet. The base of the ladder, the bottom, makes a 60-degree angle with the ground. So this is going to be 60 degrees. How high up the side of the building does the ladder reach? So we're trying to find this side right here. We're trying to find x. So x is the side across from 60, which makes it the long leg. I'm given the hypotenuse because this would be my 90-degree angle. So I need to find my short leg first, and then that will help me find my long leg. So my short leg is going to be 20 feet. Then to go from your short to your long, you multiply by the square root of 3. So that's going to be 20 square root of 3 feet. Unless the directions tell you to write it as a decimal, you're going to leave it with the square root in there. We've now reached our prove it problem. So this problem actually has a 45, 45, 90 triangle, and this is going to be 90 degrees, so this is going to be a 30, 60, 90. So use your properties of both triangles to find A, B, C, and D. Go ahead and pause the video and try this, then start to play the video once you're finished. Alright, so since the hypotenuse is 5 root 2, that means that both of my legs on the 45, 45, 90 have to be 5. So A is going to equal 5 and B is going to equal 5. Now on my 30, 60, 90, I'm given the side across from the 30, so I'm given 5. That's my short leg. That means my hypotenuse, which is D, is going to be 10. So D is equal to 10. Then my long leg across from the 60 has to be the short leg times square root of 3. So that's going to be 5 root 3. And there you go. See you guys next class.